From the minute I arrived at the Rosewood Grand Hotel that fateful evening, a heavy sense of foreboding fell over me like a dense fog. I had spent days preparing for this event, meticulously choosing my nicest suit and practicing the conversations I imagined I would exchange with Sophia's family, all in the hope that tonight might fix the hidden fractures that had long crept into our marriage. My name is Daniel Carter, and for 3 long years I believed that love, trust, and mutual respect were the very foundations of my life with her. I had taken time off work and polished every aspect of my appearance until I was convinced I looked my very best. Yet, as I moved toward the reception table, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. When the receptionist took my name, her eyes sharpened as she flipped through the guest list with calculated precision. A chilling sentence cut through the air. "I'm sorry, but your name isn't on the list." In that stark moment, it seemed as if the entire earth beneath me had given way. Horror and amazement warred within me. Was it a simple error, or had I been purposely removed? I went to Sophia, expecting an explanation, only to see her standing close to her mother, Helen, with a smile that was part amusement and part scorn. Without a shred of guilt, her voice rang out. "Did you truly believe you were invited? Outsiders aren't permitted." Her words struck me like a sharp blow, each sentence tearing at the fabric of trust I had long believed was woven between us. My heart ached with a mix of embarrassment and cold grief. Yet, even as fury sparked inside me, I tried not to let it dictate my reply. I faked a calm smile and responded softly, "Then I'll leave like a stranger." A phrase that held a finality I had never intended but could no longer ignore. With each step away from that sumptuous hall, I felt the ache of betrayal blend with a rising resolve. Every stride echoed the sad fact that the woman I had loved was no longer the person I had once respected. As I crossed the doorway into the chilly night, the sparkle of city lights flickered across my tear-swept face, and a strange sense of liberation began to blossom. Despite the anguish, I recognized that being pushed aside, however painful, might also be the first step toward reclaiming the dignity I had lost. The rejection I had received was not just a removal from a wedding guest list. It was a declaration that I had been found unworthy in the eyes of those I had once called family. Each step on the pavement reverberated with the painful irony that I had come expecting to celebrate unity, and had instead concluded the night in the agonizing solitude of a stranger. The chilly night air brushed lightly across my skin as I walked down empty streets, my mind swirling with recollections of warmer times when pledges were made and love was cherished. In that peaceful darkness, the hurt slowly transformed into a steely determination. I began to see that sometimes the deepest scars lead to the strongest rebirths. The humiliation of being publicly discarded was now a turning point, a bitter farewell to a life riddled with deception and neglect. I understood that the journey ahead would not be simple, but as I continued my solitary walk beneath the uncaring stars, a spark of hope ignited within me. I had been betrayed, humiliated, and cast aside like an unwanted guest. Yet, in that precise moment, I discovered an inner strength that promised a future unburdened by false adoration. Each breath in the cool night air reaffirmed that I was still standing, that I was still capable of determining my own future. The darkness around me was no longer a veil of despair, but a canvas onto which I could paint a new beginning. One where my worth was defined not by the acceptance of others, but by the resilience I found deep within. And so, with a heavy yet optimistic heart, I left behind the echoes of that sad evening, stepping into an unknown future, armed with the understanding that sometimes the most painful goodbyes are the only way to truly start over. I stepped outdoors, into the biting chill of the night, the cold air striking my face as I tugged at my tie in a futile attempt to restore some sense of order. My mind, strangely quiet and untroubled by wrath or despair, was filled instead with a steady clarity that cut through the turmoil. I recognized then that everything had been planned, that the cruel dismissal I had received was not a simple oversight, but a meticulously orchestrated act by Sophia and her mother, Helen. I felt as if I had been purposely erased from their lives, removed like an unwelcome name from a guest list. The sting of that shame was sharp enough to freeze my blood, yet deep within me emerged a resolve I had not known was there, a resolve to recover my dignity, even if the cost was my comfort. I climbed into my car without glancing back at the hotel's brilliant front and drove off into the calm night, my thoughts racing as fast as the city lights rushed past. The drive was lengthy and silent, the regular hum of the tires on the pavement, the only sound accompanying my chaotic reflections. I did not head for home, for returning would have meant slipping back into a life where my presence was discounted and my agony dismissed. Instead, I found myself drifting toward a tiny, quiet cafe downtown, a place that had always seemed like a refuge during gloomy times. I parked in a dimly lit section of the lot and sat in the driver's seat for a while, allowing the cool night air to mix with the lingering heat of my conflicting emotions. I remembered the countless times before when I had tried to ignore the dismissals, the unnoticed statements from Sophia, believing that love would someday bridge our differences. But that night, the truth was undeniable. I had been treated as nothing more than an inconvenience, a ghost in my own marriage. With shaky fingers, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I had memorized long ago, a number that connected me to someone who had always believed in my worth. The call, placed with deliberate intent, was not a cry for help, but a silent declaration that I would not let their hatred define me. As I listened to the ring echo in the stillness of the cafe's parking lot, I felt an unexpected peace settle over me. I realized then that if they wished to treat me like a stranger, I would forge a path that ensured they never forgot my name. My mind whirled with possibilities and plans I had long ignored in favor of quiet acceptance. The neon cafe sign flickered in the distance as I prepared to step out, and with each step away from the car, I shed a little more of my old self, an identity that had once believed in the illusion of unconditional love. I was no longer the man who waited in the wings, yearning for compassion and approval. Instead, I had become a man confident in his own worth, ready to stand alone if necessary. Every step forward was a step toward a future where I would no longer be diminished by the actions of those who had claimed to care for me. The cold air felt like a baptism, washing away past pains and infusing me with a newfound resolve. In that brief, peaceful pause before the storm of revelations and reckoning, I vowed to make my presence felt in a way that was both silent and undeniable. I would remind them that their disdain could not erase the truth of who I was. The calm before the storm was not a moment of surrender, but a pause in which I gathered my strength, my thoughts, and my resolve. Each memory, each scar, was a testament to the life I had lived and the future I intended to reclaim. With my heart steady and my resolve hardening like ice on a winter lake, I stepped into the cold darkness of the night, ready to write the next chapter of my story, on my own terms. A single wedding. It had undermined the entire foundation of a life built on deception and neglect. And as the whispers of discontent rose louder in the big hall, I silently resolved that from the ashes of their dishonesty, a truer, more honest reality would emerge. A future where respect and dignity were earned, not demanded by entitlement. The chaos that happened that day was like nothing I had ever witnessed before. I had always understood that the wedding was built on falsehoods and illusion, but I never anticipated it would all come crashing down in such a public way. The minute Isabel stormed out of the hall, her scream resonating with fierce wrath, everything changed. I stood at a distance in the crowd, hiding by pillars of costly decor and glittering chandeliers, watching as the carefully prepared facade shattered before my eyes. The groom, Zachary, struggled hard to chase after Isabel, his face a picture of panic and disbelief. His frantic cries for her to slow down were drowned out by the moans of the visitors, whose eyes flew from phone to phone, memorizing every aspect of the scandal that was unfolding. I felt a flicker of joy deep within me, a little imperceptible. Victory over years of being regarded like an afterthought, a ghost in a family that prided itself on perfection. Every whispered conversation, every hushed word around me proved what I had long thought. The world of deceptive appearances had been constructed on a foundation of cruelty and neglect. I recalled the numerous evenings spent in lonely despair, wondering why I was continuously forced to feel invisible, while many around me relished the spotlight of adulation. Today, as I observed the unfolding calamity, I felt a mix of emotions: grief for the loss of a once wonderful illusion, relief that the truth was now out, and a strong commitment to recover my dignity. The voices around me grew louder as some guests began to approach one another, their amazement developing into furious discussions over how something so horrible could be allowed to happen at what was supposed to be a celebration of love and unity. Zachary's father, Robert Kingston, arrived in the midst of the tumult. His authoritative presence demanded attention as he angrily addressed Helen, whose eyes were wide with terror and remorse. "I will not allow my son to be dragged into this mess," he stated, his voice hard and unyielding. His words carried through the hall, connecting with every person who had once believed in the purity of this wedding. Margaret, Zachary's mother, stood calmly by his side, her arms crossed as she viewed the falling tableau with a look of profound regret.